Imagine this. A monster so bizarre that when paleontologists first uncovered its fossilized remains, they accidentally divided it into 3 different animals. One part looked like a shrimp, another like a jellyfish, and the last one? Well, it resembled a sea cucumber. For decades, textbooks described these as separate creatures, until someone realized, wait, what if all these pieces belong to one single beast? That beast was Anomalocaris, which literally translates to odd shrimp. But make no mistake, this was no shrimp cocktail. This was Earth's very first apex predator, a nightmare that haunted oceans 500 million years ago, long before dinosaurs, long before sharks, even before fish had skeletons. Now let me ask you, when you think of the first terrifying animal in history, what comes to mind? Maybe a T-Rex roaring on land, or a giant shark lurking in the deep? Wrong! The very first super predator wasn't a dinosaur. It wasn't even a fish. It was a swimming alien-looking creature with rotating teeth and arms like spiked chopsticks, patrolling waters where nothing had ever faced such danger before. To understand Anomalocaris, we need to rewind Earth's clock way back. Imagine the history of our planet as a single day, 24 hours long. Humans would appear just before midnight, barely making it to the party. Dinosaurs, they'd show up around 11 p.m. Sharks, maybe 9 p.m. But the Cambrian explosion, the real moment when life went crazy and invented almost every body plan you know today, that happened around 9 p.m. sharp. The Cambrian period, roughly 541 million years ago, was like nature's first wild experiment. Until then, life was simple. Picture tiny worms wiggling in the mud, soft-bodied blobs, and some algae floating around. Then suddenly, boom! Life diversified in spectacular fashion. Hard shells, complex eyes, segmented bodies, spikes, claws. If Earth were a video game, this was the moment the developers released a massive update with 100 new features. And in this update, one creature stood out as the main villain, Anomalocaris. It wasn't just big for its time, it was colossal. While most creatures were only a few centimeters long, Anomalocaris could reach up to 1 meter. That might not sound impressive today, but imagine walking into a daycare full of toddlers and finding a full-grown NBA player inside. That's the kind of size difference we're talking about. Its design was pure nightmare fuel. 2 enormous compound eyes, each with thousands of lenses, gave it vision sharper than an eagle's. If you were a trilobite scuttling across the seabed, there was no way to hide. Its arms, covered in spikes, curved like deadly chopsticks, ready to grab you. And its mouth, forget jaws. This thing had a circular rotating maw lined with serrated plates, like a cross between a pineapple slicer and a trash compactor. Here's the kicker: scientists believe it could spot prey from far away, swoop down with lightning speed, snatch them up with its spiny arms, and shove them into that terrifying circular mouth. Imagine swimming peacefully in a Cambrian lagoon, only to be grabbed and shredded by a meter-long alien shrimp. Sweet dreams, right? But here's where it gets even more fascinating. For all its terrifying design, Anomalocaris might not have been as unstoppable as we once thought. Some researchers argue its jaws weren't strong enough to crush the armored shells of trilobites, its supposed favorite snack. Instead, it may have targeted softer, squishier prey, which means the ocean's first monster might have been more of a picky eater than a universal killing machine. And that's where our story really begins, because the Cambrian wasn't just about predators, it was about a biological arms race, the very first war of evolution. To really appreciate Anomalocaris, we need to set the stage. Close your eyes and imagine Earth 500 million years ago. Forget the continents as you know them. No towering mountains, no forests, no birds in the sky. The land was barren, lifeless, and hostile. The real action was in the oceans, which shimmered greenish blue, packed with microscopic plankton, and filled with strange shadows drifting through the light. The Cambrian seas were not quiet places. They were the first true arenas of predator and prey. Before this time, most life forms lived in a kind of peaceful, slow-motion existence, just grazing on bacteria and algae. But in the Cambrian, nature went experimental. New body plans appeared almost overnight in evolutionary terms. Creatures developed hard shells for protection, spines for defense, and better senses to detect danger. In response, predators evolved sharper eyes, stronger appendages, and speed. It was the biological equivalent of the Cold War, except the weapons were claws, teeth, and armor. And standing right at the center of this evolutionary arms race was the Anomalocaris. Picture trilobites scuttling like armored cockroaches across the seafloor, their exoskeletons glinting in the faint sunlight. Small worm-like creatures burrowed into the mud trying to vanish from sight. Soft-bodied animals floated like drifting balloons. And then, cutting through the water like a torpedo, came the shadow of Anomalocaris. To these creatures, it must have felt like a UFO attack. 1 second peace. The next, a pair of spiny arms snapping shut around them, dragging them into a circular mouth that looked more like a rotating blender than anything alive. If aliens ever did visit Earth, you could argue they already did 500 million years ago in the form of this predator. But this world wasn't just brutal, it was surreal. Picture bizarre creatures like hallucigenia, a worm-like animal walking upside down with spines sticking out of its back. So weird that scientists once reconstructed it backwards. Or opabinia, with 5 eyes and a long trunk-like appendage ending in a claw, like the Cambrian version of a vacuum cleaner. The seas were a gallery of nightmares and fever dreams, each species an experiment in survival. The timeline of the Cambrian explosion, 541 to 485 million years ago, was like a fireworks show of biodiversity. In just 50 million years, almost every major animal group we know today had its ancestors appear. That includes arthropods, mollusks, and even primitive chordates, the group that would eventually give rise to us. This was not just evolution at work, it was evolution on steroids. Think of it like the universe had just upgraded from black and white TV to 4K Ultra HD overnight. Suddenly, the oceans were bursting with color, movement, and complexity. And in this new high-definition world, predators like Anomalocaris forced everything else to level up. Without predators, prey has no reason to grow armor, to burrow deeper, or to see better. But once something like Anomalocaris enters the stage, the rules change. Every creature had 2 choices: adapt or disappear. That's the true legacy of this era: survival shaped by fear. Fear of being hunted, fear of being seen, fear of being eaten alive. And if you think that sounds dramatic, just remember, it's this evolutionary arms race that eventually gave rise to ecosystems as we know them. So while Anomalocaris ruled the seas, the rest of life was busy scrambling for upgrades. And from that scramble came innovations that still define our planet today. Now that the stage is set, let's zoom into some of the strangest, funniest, and most shocking stories surrounding Anomalocaris. Because this isn't just about fossils, it's about mistakes, surprises, and mysteries that sound more like movie plots than science. When scientists first discovered Anomalocaris fossils in the late 1800s, they didn't realize they were looking at pieces of one creature. Instead, they thought they had uncovered 3 completely separate species. The spiny arms? They assumed those were the tails of shrimp. The circular mouth? They thought it was a jellyfish. The body flaps? A type of sea cucumber. For decades, these separate animals were drawn into textbooks, taught to students, and even classified with official names. Imagine that. An entire generation of scientists studying 3 animals that never actually existed. It wasn't until the 1980s when paleontologists pieced the fossils together like a prehistoric jigsaw puzzle that they realized the truth. All these parts belong to one terrifying monster. It's like digging up a car crash, finding the wheels, bumper, and steering wheel, and deciding you've just discovered 3 new species. Science is messy, and Anomalocaris proved it. Anomalocaris didn't just have eyes, it had some of the most advanced eyes the world had ever seen. Each eye was compound, made up of thousands of tiny lenses, giving it the ability to detect motion, detail, and maybe even color. Some fossils suggest up to 16,000 lenses per eye. Joe, to put that into perspective, dragonflies today, champions of insect vision, have about 30,000 lenses in total. Anomalocaris was halfway there 500 million years earlier. If you were a trilobite crawling along the ocean floor, this was your nightmare, a predator that could see you coming from far away. even in dim, murky light. No camouflage, no quick dash, no burrow was completely safe. One paleontologist even joked that Anomalocaris was basically the Google Street View of the Cambrian seas. It saw everything, everywhere, all at once. Here's where it gets weird. For years, scientists assumed Anomalocaris fed mostly on trilobites, those armored arthropods that scuttled across the seabed like prehistoric horseshoe crabs. Fossilized trilobites are often found with bite marks shaped like half moons, which look suspiciously like the mouth of Anomalocaris. But here's the plot twist. When researchers created computer models of Anomalocaris jaws, they found something odd. The serrated plates might not have been strong enough to crush hard exoskeletons. Instead, the jaws may have flexed and bounced off. So, was Anomalocaris really chomping trilobites? Or was it more of a soft food enthusiast going after worms, jelly-like animals, and other squishier snacks? If that's true, then all those trilobite bite marks, they might have been made by something else entirely. Maybe another predator we haven't even discovered yet, which means Anomalocaris' reputation as terror of the trilobites might be exaggerated. And that's the beauty of paleontology. Just when you think you've solved the puzzle, a new piece rewrites a story. There's 3 stories: scientific blunders, alien-level eyes, and a potential diet twist already show us that Anomalocaris wasn't just another fossil. It was a creature that challenged our understanding of evolution and still keeps scientists guessing today. But there's more. Because the Cambrian seas were full of misfits and monsters, and Anomalocaris had plenty of bizarre neighbors. If Anomalocaris was the apex predator of the Cambrian seas, it certainly didn't swim alone. Its neighbors were some of the strangest life forms Earth has ever produced. Creatures so weird that even Hollywood would reject them for being too unrealistic. Let's meet a few. Picture a tiny worm about the size of your pinky, but with spines sticking out of its back like a row of daggers. That's hallucigenia. When scientists first discovered its fossils, they reconstructed it upside down, literally. They thought the spikes were legs and the wiggly little legs were tentacles. For years, textbooks showed this nightmarish creature walking around on spikes as if evolution had just given up. Only later did scientists flip it the right way up. The spikes were armor and the legs were, well, still bizarre, but at least functional. Its name, hallucigenia, says it all. It looks like something you'd see during a fever dream or after eating the wrong mushrooms. Imagine Anomalocaris spotting one of these spiny worms. It probably thought, snack or toothpick. Next on the guest list, Opabinia. If aliens landed today and crawled out of their spaceship, they'd probably look less weird than this thing. Opabinia had 5 eyes sticking out of its head, like a bug-eyed security camera, and a long, flexible trunk ending in a claw. It used that trunk like a vacuum hose, sucking up worms from the mud and stuffing them straight into its mouth. The first time scientists unveiled a reconstruction of Opabinia at a conference in 1972, the audience literally burst out laughing. It was just too ridiculous to believe. But the laughter turned to awe when they realized this wasn't a joke. Evolution really did try this design, and for a while, it worked. The Cambrian wasn't a peaceful paradise. It was a battlefield. Predators like Anomalocaris weren't alone. Smaller hunters stalked the shallows, stabbing and slicing at anything weaker. Fossil records show sudden bursts of diversification, followed by mass die-offs. In other words, the ocean was a high-risk, high-reward environment. Imagine living in those seas. No warning systems, no escape routes, just constant paranoia. Every shadow could be death. Some creatures dug deeper burrows to hide. Others evolved thicker shells, but many simply vanished, extinct before they even had a chance to shine. The tragedy of the Cambrian is that most species never made it past that period. Over 80% of the bizarre forms that evolved disappeared without leaving descendants. They were nature's prototypes, evolutionary test runs. Even Anomalocaris, the superstar predator, wasn't immune. Despite its dominance, it eventually disappeared. Why? Maybe its specialized body design couldn't adapt when prey got tougher. Maybe new predators evolved with stronger jaws and smarter strategies. Or maybe entire ecosystems shifted in ways it couldn't handle. Whatever the reason, Anomalocaris reminds us that in evolution, even the apex predator can lose the game. Being at the top doesn't guarantee survival. It only guarantees you'll have the farthest to fall. So we've seen mix-ups, alien eyes, laughable neighbors, and tragic extinctions. But what does all this mean for us today? To answer that, we need to look at how Anomalocaris fits into the grand story of life, the rhythm of evolution that continues even now. Now let's keep the pace fast, because the Cambrian seas weren't just deadly, they were straight up bizarre. Every 30 seconds, evolution threw a new plot twist. And honestly, some of them sound like rejected Pokemon designs. Among the Cambrian crowd was Waiwaxia, a creature that looked like a cross between a spiky rug and a sea pancake. Imagine stepping on your doormat and realizing it can crawl away. Covered in scales and spines, Waiwaxia was basically the medieval mace of the ocean floor. Not deadly, but you wouldn't want to bite it either. Even Anomalocaris probably thought twice before trying to chew on that crunchy nightmare. One thing to remember, the Cambrian explosion wasn't a lineup of success stories. For every design that worked, like hard shells or better eyes, there were dozens that flopped. Think of it as nature's first prototype lab. Most creatures were evolutionary drafts, scribbled down and then crumpled up by time. That's why over 80% of Cambrian species left no descendants. They were test runs. And the weird part? Some of the craziest designs still kind of echo today. Those spines? You can trace them to modern hedgehogs and porcupines. Those compound eyes. Hello, insects. Those burrowing worms. Still here. Still wiggling under your feet. Let's not forget our star. Its compound eyes weren't just powerful. They might have allowed it to track movement in ways modern predators still envy. Imagine you're a trilobite. You think you're sneaky, scuttling slowly across the sand. But to Anomalocaris, you're basically glowing like a neon sign. This was the first time in history that prey had to deal with the problem of being seen. Which is why camouflage, burrowing, and armor all became must-have survival gear. Fear, in other words, is one of evolution's best teachers. Before Anomalocaris, there were no high-speed underwater chases. Life was slow, lazy, and boring. But with this predator, the Cambrian seas became the set of the first ever action movie. Imagine a trilobite desperately crawling across the seabed while Anomalocaris swoops down like a fighter jet. If you could put sound effects to it, you'd hear the Jaws theme playing 500 million years too early. Ironically, Anomalocaris itself didn't have armor. It was soft-bodied, which meant if something bigger or tougher came along, it was just as vulnerable as its prey. In a sense, it was both the hunter and the hunted. Apex predator, yes, but also a fragile experiment. That's the bittersweet truth. Even monsters can be delicate. Imagine being a trilobite and realizing the first set of high-definition eyes in history is pointed right at you. Congratulations, you're on candid camera and the prize is being lunch. Hallucigenia looked like an error message from evolution. Even Microsoft Word would underline it in red. The Opabenia? 5 eyes in a trunk. It's like someone designed it after losing a bet. The Cambrian was chaotic, terrifying, and hilarious all at once. But the chaos had a purpose. Every failed design, every tragic extinction, every terrifying predator, it all laid the groundwork for the ecosystems we know today. And that brings us to the final act, what Anomalocaris truly meant and why its shadow still lingers 500 million years later. So what do we make of Anomalocaris? Was it a monster, a misunderstood shrimp, or simply one of evolution's earliest experiments in power? The truth is, it was all of those things. 500 million years ago, this creature reshaped the rules of life. Before Anomalocaris, the ocean was mostly about existing. After Anomalocaris, it was about surviving. It forced prey to adapt, predators to innovate, and ecosystems to become more complex. In a way, fear itself became an evolutionary force, and Anomalocaris was its first ambassador. Think about that. Every time a gazelle runs from a lion, every time a fish darts away from a shark, every time we humans feel that pulse of adrenaline when something stalks us in the dark, we are reliving a story that began with Anomalocaris. It was the blueprint for the predator-prey dance, the eternal cycle of chase and escape that still defines nature today. But here's the paradox: for all its dominance, Anomalocaris didn't last. Its soft body, its specialized jaws, its reliance on certain prey, it all left it vulnerable when the seas changed. Stronger predators appeared, prey grew harder, faster, smarter, and like so many giants in Earth's history, Anomalocaris fell, and yet in falling it passed the torch. The innovations of its time, armor, camouflage, vision, speed, were refined and perfected by the creatures that came after. In a sense, Anomalocaris didn't just live in the Cambrian, it lives in every predator that followed. Sharks, crocodiles, eagles, wolves, all of them are echoes of that first terrifying experiment in predation. That's the irony of evolution. Survival isn't about being the biggest, the strongest, or the scariest. It's about adapting to the constant shuffle of nature's deck. And sometimes, the very creature that rewrites the rules is eventually erased by them. Still, fossils don't lie. When we look at those serrated mouths, those spiny arms, those alien eyes, we're not just staring at a dead animal. We're looking into the mirror of history. Anomalocaris is a reminder that Earth's greatest mysteries are often written in the smallest, strangest details of its past. So next time you feel that chill of being watched, or that instinctive fear of the unknown, remember you're feeling something ancient. A memory older than dinosaurs, older than fish, older even than bones. You're feeling the shadow of a predator that swam through Cambrian waters long before our world looked anything like it does today. The giants may have fallen, but their echoes still ripple across time. And as long as we keep digging, keep asking, keep imagining, their stories will rise again from stone and silence. Here, in the Lost Bestiary, we dive into the pages of Earth's forgotten book, where even extinct monsters like Anomalocaris still swim, not in oceans, but in our imagination.